the final frontier this time.
We're waiting for the next verse.
So, yeah, we might end up with a little bit of happy day. You never know. You never know. You never know. Depends if I'm channeling Aretha, you know what I mean? It's like, I wish I had her voice. She was stunning voice. Stunning voice. Aretha Franklin. Yeah, stunning voice. Okay, so into the final part. So this long section is confession or admission of faults. But there's also other things in there. It's about the imminence of our death. You know, we could die at any minute, so we need to deal with this nonsense that we've got in our heads now. It's no use going for the Dhammani, Dopo Dhammani approach, because Dhammani might not come. You know, tomorrow might not happen. There's one Lama to a student who was saying that they had great difficulty placing their attention on the breath. And then they said, what if I can't find the breath? And he said, well, if you can't find the breath, you're dead and you won't be worrying about this. I think we'll just get some people to read through, if you don't mind. Where is the magic wand? You've got the magic wand. Thank you very much. Right. Maybe we'll just pass it round. So every 10 verses we'll pass it round, and then all the people who look at the floor, pigs in space-time has come. No, of course we're not going to force anyone. So maybe if Venerable Barbara, since we're on since we're on the telly, then. So from verse 27 to verse 36. Maybe if we just...
Including 36.
Including 36, yeah.
With folded hands, I request the complete Buddhas and Bodhisattvas who possess great compassion and reside in all directions. Since beginningless cyclic existence in this life and in others, unknowingly I committed negativities and caused them to be done. Overwhelmed by the mistakes of ignorance, I rejoiced in what was committed, but now seeing these mistakes, from my heart I confess them to the protectors. Whatever harmful acts of body, speech and mind I have done by means of afflictions towards the three jewels, my parents, my spiritual masters and others. All the terrible negativities done by me, a wrongdoer, who have created faults of a multitude of misdeeds, I admit to the guides. I may die before my negativities have been purified. Please protect me in such a way as will swiftly and surely free me from them, the untrustworthy Lord of Death, without waiting, whether or not something has been done, whether one is sick or otherwise. Suddenly comes, do not be complacent about life. Leaving all behind, I must depart alone. Through not having understood this, I committed various kinds of negativities for the sake of my friends and foes. Even my foes will become nothing. My friends will also become nothing. I too will become nothing. Likewise, all will become nothing. Just like an experience in a dream, whatever things I enjoy will become a memory. Whatever has passed will not be seen.
Thank you. No, to leave it on, please. Just pass it on to the next one. Francesca's got the hand out. It's the talking style. So from 37 to 46, please just check whether 46 is a good place to stop. Yes, that's good.
Even within this brief life, many friends and foes have passed away. but whatever terrible negativities I committed for them remains before me. Thereby, through not having realized that I will suddenly vanish, I committed many negativities through ignorance, attachment, and hatred. Remaining neither day nor night, this life is always slipping by, and never lengthening. Why will death not come to one like me? While I am lying in bed, although surrounded by my friends and relatives, the feeling of life being severed will be experienced by me alone. When seized by Yama's messengers, what benefit will friends and relatives afford? My merit alone shall protect me then, but upon that I have never relied. O protectors, I, so unconscientious, unaware of such terror as this, perform many negativities for the sake of this impermanent life. One who is being led today to the spot where his limbs will be mutilated, will be petrified with dry mouth, sunken eyes, and so forth. His entire appearance is transfigured. What need to mention the tremendous despair when stricken with the disease of terror, being clasped by the frightful physical forms of the messengers of Yama. Who can afford me good protection from this terror? With terrified, bulging eyes agape, I shall search the four directions for refuge. Then, seeing no refuge in the four directions, I shall become enveloped in gloom. If there should be no refuge there, at that time, what shall I do?
Thank you.
Therefore, from today onwards, I go for refuge to the victors, the protectors, and the migrating beings, who strove for the purpose of protecting migrating beings, and with great power eradicate all fear. Likewise, I perfectly go for refuge to the Dharma they have realized, that clears away the fears of cyclic existence, and also to the assembly of Bodhisattvas. I, terrified, offer myself to Samantabhadra, to Manjughosha, also I offer my body, to the protector of Avalokiteshvara, who unmistakably acts with compassion, I utter a manful cry, please protect this wrongdoer. In my search for refuge, I cry from my heart to Akashgabhara, Ksitabhara, and all the compassionate protectors, and I go for refuge to Vajrapani, upon the sight of whom all hateful beings, such as the messengers of Yama, flee in terror to the four directions. Previously I transgressed your words, but now, upon seeing this great fear, I go to you for refuge. By doing so, please swiftly clear away this fear. If I need to comply with the doctor's advice when frightened by an ordinary illness, then what need to mention that it is so when perpetually diseased by the hundreds of folds of attachment and so forth. If all the people dwelling in Jambuvida can be crushed by just one of these, and if no other medicine to cure them is to be found in all the directions, then the intention not to act in accordance with the words that can uproot every misery of the all-knowing physician is extremely bewildered by an object of scorn.
Thank you. William. Yeah?
Me
You're
speak
gonna go
no
for-
English.
Watch it, I'll make you translate it into Polish. Okay, please go for the last run. So up until the end.
Okay, I do apologize because I probably will. Some words won't be as correct. But
Confidence.
No,
It doesn't matter.
Yeah. Okay. If I need to be conscientious near a small ordinary precipice, then how much more so near the precipices of long duration that drop for thousands of yojanas. It is inappropriate to stay happily thinking, today alone I shall not die, for inevitably the time will come when I shall go out of existence. Who will grant me fearlessness? How can I be surely freed from this? If I shall inevitably go out of existence, how can I remain in mental happiness? What remains with me now from these past experiences that have gone through my adherence to them? I have gone against my spiritual master's advice, leaving behind this life, and likewise my friends and relatives. If all alone I must go elsewhere, how appropriate are friends and enemies? how can I be surely freed from non-virtue, the source of suffering, continually, night and day? Should I only consider this? Through unknowing and ignorance, whatever I have committed, be it a natural misdeed or a stipulated negativity, I confess all of them directly in the presence of the protectors, with folded hands, prostrating again and again, my mind terrified by suffering. I request the guides to please accept my negativities as being mistakes. Since they are no good, I shall not do them again.
Thank you. Thank you to all of you for that. So, with that, have you heard something like that somewhere else in the prayers that we occasionally do on the big holy days here? Think another option? You're right, it's on one of those things that we do, but no.
Are you referring to specific person?
A specific puja we do on the big holy days here, a Shakyamuni Buddha puja. Do you remember the confession section in that? So instead of their what is it? Where are we? So there, instead of all the terrible negativities done by me, a wrongdoer, Martin translated it as done by me, a brute. But it's the same thing. We've already had some discussion about this. The point of confessing or dealing with this stuff now is that we really don't know how long we have to live. And so starting to deal with this is beneficial for the next people in the continuum. Maybe even beneficial for us in this life, but beneficial for the next people in the continuum, because they will have less of an exciting mix in them than we had when we came. So if we can cut some of the stuff out, cut the nonsense down, then we benefit them. But we can also see it as being kind to ourselves in the future of this life, in that if we start to, I think it was this group that kind of identified that the problem with wrong, or whatever you like, is that it disturbs the mind. It makes the mind edgy and kind of jumpy. And as we all know from trying to meditate, that's a big problem, that the mind is disturbed. So if we calm the mind down, if we make the mix much more smooth and free-flowing, then that benefits the future of this life. It definitely benefits the next people in the continuum, the next beings in the continuum, who definitely won't be Mike Murray, you know what I mean, in terms of my life. This is very much linked with this body, this particular set of things. It won't be that at all. It may well not be human for all I know. But we need to deal with these things now, but we need also not to freak ourselves out. Again, it's this thing of wisdom, using a bit of wisdom. Start working on it now as well as we can, not, oh, I can't do it well enough, or on that funny mind we have. I don't know if it's a universal thing across all cultures, but definitely in London you meet it quite often. I can't do it well, I can't do it perfectly, therefore I won't start it at all. It's quite interesting, that, because how do you learn anything new? Because we always make mistakes when we start something new. That's how it is, and we learn from our mistakes. Somehow there's this fear of mistake in the sense of not allowing ourselves to learn from our mistakes. But again, it comes to this stepping on, moving on. Yes, we've done these things. Yes, I recognize this. Yes, I don't want to continue the rest of my existences with this nonsense on the mind. I want to be free of that. So I start little by little taking that out, you know. I'm recognizing that it's a really difficult process to undo patterns and habits that we've made in this life and quite possibly in previous lives, you know. There's the tendency to, I don't know, get angry with certain people, to despise certain people, to have preconceptions about certain people. Most of you are young in Dharma, but we used to have a volunteer here called Christina Dogger. And she did a very nice exercise just to show how we come with preconceived patterns, you know. So she'd say, okay, let's just everybody sit there and we think, and I'm going to say a word to you about different groups of people, and then see what comes up, yeah? So, Americans. Somebody already laughed. The French. The Arabs. The Russians. The Welsh. We have a whole series of things, you know, and they're mild, but it shows just how quickly they come. We don't have to think about it, they just come, don't they, you know. In Eastern Europe, and sort of South, I noticed that Romanians have a bad thing. And a friend of mine has an old lady who's lived most of her life in England, but she's German by extract, South German, and she comes out with great phrases every now and again. And she said to him, "My dear, never trust anybody south of the Carpathians." Okay. And the other thing she came up with I mean, it's not good for Romanians, obviously, but it does show that kind of preconceived mind of Romanian is not a nationality, it's a profession. But these, we don't just, nothing comes unladen with value, does it? I mean, in the way our lives come, things come so fast, so quickly. These things where we're sorting people out into groups that are higher or lower and all the rest of it. And we have, in each culture, we have our own stories about various groups, you know. It's very strong like that. But in terms of our preconditioning, we need to be very sure that the preconditionings are not running us, that we're aware of them, and that we can, if they're unhelpful preconditionings, that we can first laugh at them because we've picked them up from somewhere, but also let go of them, you know. So yes, you might have that sense of, you know, yes, don't trust anyone south of the Carpathians, you know. But then when you meet somebody from south of the Carpathians, you can be open to the fact that they might be trustworthy. But these habits that we have, these culturally acquired habits, these family acquired habits, they're very strong, you know. I mean, I laugh. My dad too, when he traveled around Europe and sold cranes all over the place, his two favorite groups of people, because they drink quite heavily and he's a Scot, were Poles and Greeks. So as a child, I am just preconditioned to think that all Poles are fun and all Greeks are fun. And when I went to Greece earlier this year, all my preconditioning came up, and I traveled with somebody who didn't have that preconditioning at all, saw all Greeks as being, you know, be slightly careful of them, and it was really interesting to watch just how the frame of mind changed the experience, because I was going, yeah, it's fantastic, you know, and all the rest of it. And they were like, watch it, be careful, you know. But that preconditioning, in that sense, I think was a good thing. But I can also have other preconditionings. You know, in England, when I was a child, the groups that were kind of, you don't mix with them, tinkers, Irish travellers, gypsies, you know. And particularly when I was young, I remember very distinctly the tinkers would come round, and you have to keep them distant, but also they're the people with the grinder that sharpen your knives. So you have to engage with them at the same time. And it reminded me very much of, in the Tibetan exile communities, and also in Old Tibet, that the metal workers who make the statues in the monasteries, they were considered a kind of slightly, not quite outcast, but a dangerous caste. I think it comes from a very alchemical thing of changing, stuff into metal. So even though they make the beautiful image of Tsongkhapa and the two disciples, they have to live on the edge of the monastery in a kind of hut in their own special encampment, and they can't mix. And I remember when I went to Tibet in '87, in Beijing, I met somebody, we were chatting to some students, Tibetan students, and one of them said, I'm very lucky to be here because I come from the hearth makers caste. And I said, what do you mean? And she said, well, we'd have never had an education in the past because we were always kept away from everybody else. It's kind of one of these things. They make these little pottery hearths that Tibetans had to cook on. They didn't have a fire in that classic sense. It's kind of pottery thing with a round bowl, and you put the wood and everything underneath and the yak dung, and you burn and it heats up. But the people who make that, again, are a kind of slightly separate group in Old Tibet. And they weren't, I suppose, we have it with, in the old days it used to be, don't put your daughter on the stage, that kind of stuff. There are certain professions that are considered, Circus, exactly, yes, that's true, yeah. Yes, my sister was very cutting about where she lived in Folkestone, or near Folkestone, her place, and she said, they're the kind of people who make circus people look respectable. But we all have these conditionings. But also in terms of our behaviors, in this life we can have obsessive behaviors, angry behaviors. Various things can trigger us and other things don't. So in terms of regretting past behaviors, then we can do that on the cushion, or we can do that in meditation. But if you're trying to stop repeating it, then sometimes it's helpful not to put yourself in that situation, So if you have a problem with drink, try not to hang out with people who drink, or hang out with them very early in the morning when they're unlikely to be going for the jar, you know what I mean? That find ways round it, not cut all your friends off from the past, but just find ways round it. Because we're very socially conditioned. I mean, it used to be, when smoking was very common, you'd say people would give up smoking, but then when they'd have a drink, they'd have a cigarette, because they kind of went hand in hand together. I presume that doesn't happen so much now because you can't smoke in pubs. But maybe it still does, I don't know, because you lose your mindfulness, your awareness by doing that. There's the story of the dangers of alcohol, which is one of the Lam Rim stories, where there was a monk in a cave, and robbers came, and next door there was another nun who was doing meditation also, and the robbers came and started causing trouble, and then they said they were going to kill him. So unless he either killed the pet goat that he had and ate it, or slept with the nun, or had a drink. They said they were going to kill him. So he thought, well, I can't kill the goat, can't sleep with the nun, I'll have a drink. And then the Lam Rim story, of course, is he got drunk and he killed the goat, and then he and the nun ate it and slept with each other. But it's that, but that loss of, but that's the thing, isn't it? When we're off our guard, then these things can come up easier than when we're on our guard. So when we're trying to change a pattern of behavior, it's good to be aware of our weaknesses and don't put ourselves in situations like that. It's like we, in Dharma centers, you get these kind of things. We had someone who helped us for a couple of years, and it was great. And then there was a moment when they admitted to me that it was very good buying things for the Dharma Center, because otherwise they had a problem with as a kind of shopaholic. So by spending the Dharma Center's money, they didn't spend so much of their own, which did set alarm bells going in my head a bit. But we need to manage our own particular sets of problems. I have a friend who has a relationship with drink, I think it's the phrase you would say, but doesn't drink when they're living on their own. So that's great, that's admirable. But of course, when they meet anybody else, then they tend to get pie-eyed quite quickly, and for quite a long time. And two things come out of that. One is that you feel slightly used in that sense of, oh, I'm in company, whack it back. And the other thing is that maybe I've just lost that tolerance, or I don't get drunk enough often enough, but actually when people are drunk, they're very boring. They bang on and on about the same thing. And after a while, it just comes that kind of, oh, really? But we need, but only, this is the thing, these are general things, to regret our past misdeeds, but only we know what they are. Only we know what our weaknesses are in terms of repeating the things. So we need to make our own way in that. And there's no point in saying to somebody, oh, I have this problem, and then, they go, well, I do this, because it might not work for you, You need to test these things out. But the basic thing of a Vajrasattva, where the descent of the nectars, the cleansing, purifying nectars, and the understanding of emptiness that destroys the substance behaviors that we have, which caused the thing in the first place, but also makes us cling on to the bad deed, and it all becomes quite lumpy and solid and dollopy and puddingy, and just by moving down those cleansing lights, by getting that sense of a body purified, a mind purified, and then eventually manifesting as a fully enlightened Buddha for that moment, psychologically, I completely understand that. I think that's a very good way to go, because it moves us on. That's the thing. It moves us on. We have some space to move forward. Otherwise, we're locked in the past. We're driven by the past. We're driven by our fears. It's like when you have fears of anything, sometimes consciously putting yourself outside of the comfort zone, your comfort zone, is beneficial. Sometimes you also have to retreat back into it because it's quite hard outside the comfort zone, and you need to be kind to yourself at the same time. But if we don't push, nothing's going to change, particularly in terms of enlightenment and unenlightenment, That better the devil we know. No, actually, not. We need to step out. We need to come out and face these things, but gently in our own time, So there are a couple of things in here that I just wanted to kind of highlight. So when you get to 50, verse 50, 49-50, this area, there's offering myself to Samantabhadra, to Manjughosha, to Avalokiteshvara, to Akashgarbha, Siddhigarbha, Vajrapani. That's what that list has done, has given 6 of the 8 great bodhisattvas, the Astamaha bodhisattvas. So you don't really see it now, but in Old Tibet you would have the Buddha, a statue of the Buddha, and around the room, the little room where the Buddha is on his throne, you have the 8 bodhisattvas standing there. It doesn't seem to be something that's being replicated in India. But the 8 bodhisattvas are the kind of, in the Mahayana tradition, that they're seen, if you think of the image of the Buddha on his lion throne, and you have the two lions in each corner supporting the throne. They're sort of standing on their hind legs, supporting the throne here. They're behind. They are the Ashtamaha Bodhisattvas. They are the 8 great Bodhisattvas. That's a sign of them, if you like. So they're very much part of that kind of core Mahayana tradition, that core Bodhisattvayana tradition. Then, yeah, so the other one I wanted to just briefly highlight is 59, verse 59. Who will grant me fearlessness? How can I be surely freed from this? Fearlessness. You know, in the descriptions of the Buddha, there's a thing about him being fearless. You know, that it's something we all need to develop. That confidence, that assurance, being fearless. If we have problematic things going on in our minds, we're not going to have complete assurance, complete confidence, complete fearlessness. So again, that process of the Vajrasattva purification, I don't know how it works. I have no idea how it works. But somehow, by doing Vajrasattva practice, we move on bit by bit. On some subtle level, it seems to make a difference. All retreat, to some extent, makes a difference. There's a very nice thing, you know, when the first 3-year retreat in France in the big, the center, Kagi Center in the Dordogne, when they came out of that, and then people are really interested, you know, so what are they like at the end of it? And somebody asked Mathieu Ricard, well, you know, what are they like? What are they like? And he said, oh, they're very nice people now. Very decent people. They're decent people. That was the phrase. And you know, that's okay. That's good. Not like we all kind of go in thinking, and I'll come out a Buddha. Maybe a little later, but if we become decent people, you know, tick that box for a start. All right, so we have a meditation to do. So, and then that's it. So if you look at the meditation sheet, the last one, the last meditation, and it's taking verse 30 and 31, but it's taking them as just representative in the same way that the bathing chamber was taking that as a representative. Whatever harmful acts of body, speech, and mind I have done by means of afflictions towards the 3 jewels, my parents, my spiritual masters, and others, in other words, everybody else, all the terrible negativities done by me, a wrongdoer, a brute, who have created faults of a multitude of misdeeds, I admit to the guides. Okay? So again, we're getting back to that openness, that, you know. So then, 10 minutes or so, if we just focus on that, meditate on that, think about that, and try and develop this sense of being completely and utterly honest with the Buddhas, the Bodhisattvas, recognizing we have faults, recognizing past things that we've done that are really unskillful, but not getting locked into them, not dwelling on them and clinging to them, but moving on, but being absolutely honest with the Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, you know, and our you know, if we have a teacher, with our teachers, not putting on the Dharma mask, you know, the holy being, the good meditator, you know, being honest. Sometimes the meditation is fantastic, other times it's rubbish, you know, just being honest. Okay. Thank you. Okay, so that's chapter 2, and then chapter 3 begins with rejoicing. So maybe as a little exercise for yourselves tonight, do some rejoicing. You know, you've done lots of confession, admission, so do some rejoicing in your own good deeds as well as in the good deeds of others. They don't have to be massive, you know, helping bugs out of the house, helping old ladies across the road, whether they want to go or not, all those things count as good deeds. Yeah, okay. So then we'll do some prayers to finish up with, and I will take this off. Okay, bye-bye, internet world.